we moved to Yellowknife, the Northwest Territories, when I was 2 years old. I was living in a low-income neighborhood, and lots of people aged out of foster care. And I think one of the last residential schools in Canada closed there in the 1990s. And
Sapha grew up surrounded by addictions and trauma. His first attempt on his own life happened at 9 years old. After spending years in addiction, he sought answers through LSD.
So I sucked the whole vial up into a syringe and I just injected it right into my arm, thinking, not really caring, honestly.
While that experience did leave him with some valuable teachings and insights, after being turned down for treatment by the British Columbia government, he was ready to give up once and for all.
You know, I told my family, I was like, look, I can't do another winter. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing, trapped. That email got to my aunt, Tina, in Saskatchewan, and they just said, get on a plane and come to Leipzig Serenity Retreat, and you can come for free. You just need to get here.
After completing treatment, Sapha did find recovery, but still the dark thoughts kept creeping in. That's when he found ayahuasca.
You know, so there was a shift in my perception. I felt the effects. There was this definite female glowing green light that came down, and I received a reply, and she said, you need to learn how to love yourself. And I was like, well, how do I do that?
In this episode, Donna and I talked to Sapha about why his using got out of control, how psychedelics like LSD and Ayahuasca brought him healing, and how he has now dedicated his life to helping others integrate Ayahuasca and Ceremony into their healing journey. But before we get into it, what's up? My name's Dan, podcaster, keynote speaker, and advocate, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, your addictions podcast. Now, let's get into our talk with Sapha Habibi.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
What's up, Sapha? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Happy to be joining you on the show.
You are coming to us all the way from the jungles of Peru. Isn't that right?
That's right, yeah.
You're
I'm in the Peruvian Amazon.
Yeah, so you have a grass roof over you and a mosquito net beside you, and other than that, you are in the Amazon rainforest.
So incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
So, you reached out to me a little while ago. I think you found us through the Drug Data Decoded episode that we did. The Evan Thompson, or Ewan Thompson, he must have posted our episode together, and you reached out and you wanted to share your story. And what really struck me is, like, you know, you're all the way down there in the Amazon rainforest, but you got sober here in Saskatchewan, and we were talking a little bit, and you talked like you were in the oil patch and stuff like that up here. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, I spent 12 years drilling in Alberta, northern BC, and spent 12 years, and the whole time of that I was using.
Why don't we take a step back even further than that? Why don't you start out, just tell us your story, man. Like, where did this all get started for you? Were you born into it?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely born into a really dysfunctional family. My father immigrated to Canada from Iran in the 1980s and met my mom in Nova Scotia. And, you know, I think things got off to a pretty bad start young. And then we moved to Yellowknife, the Northwest Territories, when I was 2 years old. And, you know, Yellowknife is a really isolated community, and I was living in a low-income neighborhood, and lots of people aged out of foster care. And I think one of the last residential schools in Canada closed there in the 1990s. And so I was, really immersed in heavy drug and alcohol use at a young age, and kids and other people in the community. It was just kind of what was happening and what was going on. And by the time I moved to British Columbia, I was like, you know, had already explored multiple substances. And by the time I was 13, 14, I was doing cocaine and whatever else I could get my hands on.
Wow.
So what did your family have to say about that digression, sorry.
Into substance use?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I stopped, I wasn't around that much, you know, 15, 16. I was kind of like, I wasn't going home because home wasn't a good place for me to be. So I was like out skateboarding with my friends and hanging out with older people who had houses or places that I could stay, or just staying with other friends whose parents were okay with, drinking and drug use.
Yeah. You mentioned the residential schools and how you were around when sort of the last one of them closed. Did that play any sort of role in your life at the time? Like when the things started to come to light?
The class actions?
Yes, the class action suits and all that. Like, were you in the peripheral of that at all? Like, did you see any of the fallout?
I had like this old memory come up for me about my mom. My mom and I had got separated when I was like 13, and my mom actually worked at a place called Acacho Hall, which was a residential school. She worked in the kitchen.
Wow.
And I just had this memory of being a kid and visiting my mom at work for the first time. And I was playing with like a toy on this table and eating a Rice Krispie square. And I just remember looking out at like this cafeteria full of children that I thought it was weird that they all looked the same and that nobody was talking and everybody was just kind of mesmerized by me, like playing. And when I got reunited with my mom, 17 or 18 years later, I remember like asking her about that. And she told me, and I didn't know that at the time when I was a kid or at any point in my adult life, that's where my mom worked. But that was part of it. And when they closed that place, my mom was laid off and lost her job. And a lot of people that I am connected with now were residential school survivors and people who were in that system. Wow. And it was horrific, really. I can't imagine.
That sounds like that might be a haunting memory. And like maybe not knowing then what you know now, that must have hit pretty heavy when those truths started to be revealed.
Yeah, it's a shameful tragedy that the government and police and whatever other organizations carried out and still continue to harm Indigenous communities.
So you got into it really heavy when you were 14, 15. That's what I'm picking up, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
When you were getting into it at that time, did you realize you were going down the wrong path? Did you realize that you were headed for a train wreck, or was this all just party and having fun?
I didn't care at that time. I had already given up. I was struggling with suicidal thinking, and I was already just didn't think I was gonna really live to see my adult life. So I had already given up at that point. Didn't care. I was already convinced and certain that I wasn't going to see my adult life. And, firstly, I struggled with really severe suicidal thoughts, chronic suicidal thoughts, and, had made my first suicide attempt at 9 years old.
Whoa, wow. Let's take a step back there for a minute. 9 years old, really?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what happened at 9 years old that led you down to that?
I think I was just, my family life and my home life, my mother was really not well. My dad was quite abusive and violent at times. And I think, I was struggling with maybe a learning disability, or I was having difficulty concentrating and just making it through being a kid in school. And things were difficult and I just didn't want to be alive anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember that. And, I was living in the north, and it's like 9, 10 when the first few times that I drank alcohol and smoked weed. And it was like, once I kind of found that I could alter myself with drugs, then that was just what I began to kind of go for and crave. But the suicidal thinking, I struggled with my entire adult life. Until I started working with ayahuasca, and that actually made a really big shift for me.
So before we get into that, I'm interested to know, so you 9 years old, that's That's tragic. I'm sorry that you experienced that. But when did it start to get to a place where you started to like think that maybe you should live a different life? Like, was it a one-time thing that you made that decision, or were there stints throughout your life where you tried to get sober and maybe even found some sobriety for a while and then slipped back in?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the last times I tried to kill myself, I was 19 years old. And it was like a alcohol fueled binge. And I woke up in the emergency room, and, I had no idea of what I had done or what had happened. And, the police were involved, and it was kind of, I had this like mandate that I needed to go to drug and alcohol counseling and go to AA. And, I needed to, it was a, prescribed medication and, all of these different things. And, I quit drinking for 6 years, but I thought that I could still do other drugs and, continue to use cocaine, other stimulants and opiates. And it kind of, I managed for a while living that way. But then eventually I ended up going back to alcohol. And for me, it was like always alcohol is what really led me down the dark path, because once I started drinking, I just don't care about anything or anybody, and then the drugs always kind of seem to follow. So I started going to AA and NA when I was 19, and I never got a year off of my drugs of choice until I was 29, and I actually went to a treatment center. But it was like 10 years of trying and definitely knowing that I had a problem, but never really sure of exactly how to push it and do the work, and lacked community and lacked people who were also I guess like me, right, who struggled with the same kind of thing. So
did you, like, when you were involved with the program, did you do the suggestions? Did you like do the steps and get a sponsor and service work and all of the things? Like, did that align with what you felt you needed to do?
Not until I went to treatment. In the previous 10 years of, coming in and out, I just was like, I would go because I felt like I had to, or because I, maybe was desperate, or I just wanted to be able to like go and have a coffee and smoke cigarettes. There was this one meeting you could smoke and drink coffee. So, sometimes I would go for that, but I never took any of the suggestions. No, because I looked at people who, said that they've been going there for 20 years and 25 years. And I was like, I'm not like you. I'm not going to need to keep coming here for this. Yeah. And I don't, I don't go to meetings, 12-step fellowship meetings anymore. I love them. I think they're great. I think that, what I did when I went to treatment was, the Green and Gold NA book. And that gave me the ability to kind of build a foundation where I'm like, okay, I know that I can't use alcohol, cocaine, opiates. They're out, but a psychedelic experience led me to that decision to actually finally, go to treatment and really apply myself. And when I was there, I was just honest about that. Yeah. And the person who was my counselor, was really curious about my psychedelic experience. That kind of led me to the path that I'm on now, and just was like, she told me, when you leave here, if your plan is to explore psychedelic therapy, don't let anybody tell you that that's wrong. If you're going to do it in a healthy way, and you're doing it to support yourself, and you're finding relief from your symptoms, because the drug and alcohol use and other self-harming behaviors are just the symptoms of my trauma, depression that I struggled with. And so she was really cool about it. And so that's what I did. I explored it through accessing psychedelic therapy with therapists who work with different medicines underground outside of the law.
So it's interesting you mentioned Green and Gold. There was literally a Green and Gold on the desk here, like just before the show, and it was in Donna's way, and she's like, I need to move this.
I did not say that.
What's this? This is in my way. Okay, she didn't say it exactly like that,
No.
but yes, but they were in fact in her way. So, but it's cool that you brought that up because I needed to bring that book out just the other day. Honestly, I had another guy in here that I know that also practiced in psychedelics and continues to do so, and we needed to prop his laptop up, so we used the green and gold and 2 basic texts, and we got the job done. So,
Awesome.
but not unlike your counselor, I'm interested to know about the psychedelic experience that brought you to a treatment center, to a 12-step treatment center, no less. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience was like and like what brought you to the doorstep of what is now Prairie Sky Recovery Center?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. So I was living in Dawson Creek in northern BC, and I was working in the oil and gas industry. It was the last year of my career. I had no idea that was what was about to happen, but it was like Christmas Day and all the liquor stores were closed. I had nobody that I could get drugs from. I was an intravenous drug user, cocaine, opiates, and pretty much just loaded using anytime I wasn't at work on the rig. And a couple of weeks before that, I was talking to a friend about how I was really struggling and, wanted to change. And so he sent me a vial of liquid LSD and with a little card that said, pray, meditate, write a gratitude list, put 2 drops on a sugar cube and go for a walk in nature kind of thing. And I just crumpled the card up and threw it in the trash and just thought, what a bunch of hippie bullshit, and put the LSD in the junk drawer, kind of forgot about it. And then that Christmas Day rolled around and I was really not well. And, I was like, hey, I've got that vial of what is supposedly LSD. I'm going to just do it. So I sucked the whole vial up into a syringe and I just injected it right into my arm, thinking, not really caring, honestly, or thinking anything would even happen. Is it actually LSD? I'd done LSD many times, in my younger days, but it was always accompanied with other substances. It was never done on its own. And so I had like what you would call, I guess, a spiritual awakening, or what I think other people would say is a spiritual awakening. And
I don't mean
long
to
story
laugh.
short, I realized, no, it's okay. Let's
just take a moment. Let's just take a moment here and absorb what you just said.
Yeah.
You slammed a whole vial. Like, do people even inject LSD?
I didn't even know you
Is
could
that a
inject
thing?
that.
Like, do people do that?
Yeah, you can inject it. Yeah, you can, as long as it gets into your bloodstream. If you can put it on your tongue, you can put it in your blood.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah, I'm like, peer reviewed. Our slogan is
never heard of that.
Our slogan is lived experience is an education second to none, and Sapha's here to co-sign that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So tell us, like, can you tell us about the experience? Like, what did you find in there? That must have been wild, man.
And like, how long did it last?
Yeah.
That must have been a long
So
journey.
it was a really unusual journey too, because like I said, I was in such a dark place.
Mm-hmm.
I was so unhappy. I was so miserable. I wanted my life to be over. And I was really close, I was really close to just giving up and just taking my life. And that experience really shifted things for me profoundly. I had a really good time in a lot of ways, and I was shown so many things. It was like, you hear people describe these mystical psychedelic experiences and having visions, and I had all of that. And what I saw and felt and heard was this presence, this female presence that was like speaking to me and basically telling me, if you ever want to be happy, you need to stop doing what you're doing to yourself. You need to stop working in the oil and gas industry. You need to stop using drugs and alcohol and all of the other unhealthy things that you're doing to yourself. And you need to go somewhere and you need to get help. That was clear. And at the same time, there were all of these other little snippets of parts of my life that could be, if I wanted, like going back to school and pursuing an education in something, getting my health back. I was 226 pounds, really overweight. I had like 2 chronic pain conditions, broken tailbone, occipital neuralgia, fibromyalgia. I was just not well. And, I saw myself getting healthy. I saw myself getting well. And it was this really beautiful experience. I'd say the whole thing lasted maybe like 14 hours by the time
Holy
it was
Dinah.
done. But there was a period of time where I was gone. I wasn't there. It was just like fractals. I don't know who I was. I was not there. But the message was clear, like, get help now, and 2 days later, I had a U-Haul truck pull up. I told my girlfriend at the time, who was away at work, sorry, like I'm not well. I need to go to rehab. She was super cool about it. She didn't use substances the way that I did, and she knew that I needed to get better. And so I loaded it up and I moved back to Vancouver Island, where I was previously, and started going to mental health and addictions offices and just being super honest, like, hey, I'm really scared that I'm going to lose my life and I want to go to rehab. What do I have to do? And they guided me through the whole process, and I filled out all the applications. I did every single thing. I went to the mental health and addictions office, almost every other day to meet with the nurse and counselor and people. And, in that period of time, I didn't stop using. The psychedelic experience showed me what I needed to do, but it wasn't enough to make me stop. I definitely was a little bit more careful than I was, and it gave me this glimmer of hope that maybe something from that experience was true. Maybe what I saw was possible. Maybe I just needed to get somewhere that I could get a break from everything and really learn how to get my life back on track. And then I got a call from the Ministry of British Columbia to let me know that my application for government funded treatment had been denied. And I was devastated and shocked and confused. Like, what do you mean my application's denied? And, when you go through that process, you have to submit your taxes from the year before. And I had been working on the oil rigs, and the woman said on the phone, well, here it says you made such and such amount of money. Why can't you pay for treatment yourself? And I said, well, because I live paycheck to paycheck on $12,000 a month. Like, I don't have anything. I spend all my money, and that's true. I spent all my money on drugs, alcohol, gambling, strip clubs, whatever, you name it. It was like I never had anything left after being there for 12 years, nothing. And I just said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, well, you need to apply for welfare and then prove that you're not working and show us that you're on welfare, and then you can reapply to go to treatment.
Wow.
And I had already waited six months for that answer. And so I gave up, and I went on a hard binge for a while, and I was, I was going to end my life. Yeah, I was going to end my life. I remember I was like, I told my family, I was like, look, I can't do another winter. I don't want to be doing what I'm doing, trapped, using the way that I'm using. I'd rather be dead. And somehow that email got to my aunt, Tina, in Saskatchewan, and she shared it with her boss at the time, Ardith, and they just said, get on a plane and come to Leipzig Serenity Retreat, and you can come for free. You just need to get here. So I just took that opportunity to do that and got there, and that was June 10th, 2015, and haven't used alcohol, cocaine, or opiates since.
Beautiful, man.
That place really changed my life. Yeah. Gave me an opportunity to do good.
So that's meaningful to me as well. They're now Prairie Sky Recovery Center, and Ardith's daughter now is the CEO. She runs the place. Her name's Jacqueline Hoffman, and they were Hard Knocks Talk's very first flagship sponsor. They stepped forward in a very meaningful way. They brought stability to my work. A lot of the equipment that you see behind me, it's thanks in part to them. So I'm really happy to have your story on our platform. So, but speaking of sponsors, let's just take a quick minute here. What a segue.
Yeah.
Let's just take a quick minute here. We're going to read out tonight's sponsors, and then we're going to talk about recovery. So we'll be right back. This episode is premier sponsored by Wellness Choice Healthy Living. Wellness Choice Healthy Living is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals, locally allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. EHN Canada. Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based and medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering from substance use disorder. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Pine Lodge, the treatment center I went to 7 years ago when I got sober, offers inpatient addictions treatment and aftercare programming in Regina, Saskatchewan. To inquire about services or make a donation, call 306-510-1891. Métis Nation Saskatchewan has announced its path to pursuit of self-government. As an MNS citizen, I am proud to see my government fight to protect my rights. This is our moment. To learn more about the treaty and our path to self-government, go to ourmoment.ca. Are you affected by someone else's substance use? Family and friends can be okay and do recover. Nar-Anon can help. Contact Ronnie at 306-731-7573 for meeting information. To make contact or to learn more about today's sponsors, to check out our merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are also in the show notes below. So, you walked through the doors. Aradith said hello, and it's time to get to work. What did that work look like for you now, after having that psychedelic experience and after having spent so much time in the rooms previously without having any significant time strung together? What was it like when you walked into that recovery house and they handed you the 12 steps again?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just at a place where I was like, I don't know shit, and this might be my only chance to really get this right. And I want it to be done. I want it to be done. I knew in my heart that as long as I kept using the substances that I was using, I was never going to find happiness. I was never going to be healthy. And the job that I had just enabled me more, kept me isolated. So when I got the chance to get into doing that work, I had been resistant to it all the previous 10 years and had no concept of spirituality or, having to come to believe in a higher power. And I found a lot of that talk quite cringy. And I just was like willing and open to learn. And I was like, give me what you got. What do I have to do? And the counselor that I had, Jenny Mayer, who was there, was very open-minded and was into a lot of things: yoga, coloring, drumming. It wasn't just like hardcore do your step work type of vibe. There was a lot of creativity. There was a lot of discussion and time to be outside. And, she would get me to connect with the trees. And I was like, this is fucking weird. What, okay, and it was like, but I was just like, hey, cool. I'm open to it and I'll do it. And she really became a really strong mentor for me and somebody who supported me in my pursuits of, finding psychedelic therapy in a safe and manageable way. And I feel really fortunate because of her and because of the opportunity to get away from where I was and what I was doing. It empowered me to continue to find peace within myself and explore whatever I needed to do. And I went to NA and AA back on the island for I think the first 18 months. And then, I was like, that acid experience I had, I feel like it would be good to do it again now that I'm here. And, psilocybin, mushrooms. And so I started to explore psychedelics again while I was, in the rooms, and did it during a set of steps that I was working on. And one of my sponsors at the time was like, wow, it's so good that you're, doing your step work and this and that. And, I really see the change. And I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I've been taking psychedelics to help me with them. And then it was just like, oh my God, what are you doing? You're using, it was this deal. And I was really upset by that, and, found it all very hypocritical, because there are a lot of people in the rooms who are like, they're on SSRIs, or they're on MAT, or they're on, anti-anxiety meds, or whatever it might be. And I never said shit to anybody. If you need to be on something prescribed, great. If it's helping you do what you need to do, great.
Pounding coffee, smoking cigarettes.
Whatever it might be. I mean, I think like substance use in general just needs to be more normalized and less stigmatized. And so for myself, I was like, hey, this is working for me. I'm going to keep doing it. And then I'm going to just find people who are cool with it. And I did. I found community. And then when I went to my first weekend of ayahuasca ceremony, I met other people in recovery who were there and who were doing it, and it just legitimized the whole thing. And then, and as the years went on, I went back to university to study social work, and I was the only student in my cohort writing about psychedelic therapy and writing about it as a tool to overcome substance use disorders. And I made friends with professors, who were like, what you're doing is great. We support this. This is amazing to see somebody talking about these things. And that, having the lived experience that I have. And I just got my life back. I got healthy. I got to deal with a lot of my pain and difficulties and things that I never was able to really confront because I was just so busy being stuck in, hardcore drug use and isolation. And, the party thing, like partying, it was never about partying for me. When I use drugs, I use them alone. Yeah. That's how I use. It was never, maybe there was a little period of time where it was a party thing, but very quickly I was using on my own by myself.
So did you ever find that, like, you went through Leipzig, you came out, you started going to NA, when you started considering using psychedelics again, like you were just like using street acid at the time? Is that right?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you would call it street acid, but I was pretty well resourced at that point. Okay. And, I had a way to get it and know that it was what it was, and that it was safe, and that it was clean. And it was, it was a reliable and trustworthy, very reliable and trustworthy source that sadly is no longer, available. But I hope in the future, when things become a little bit more accessible, it will be. But for now, it's not. But that was what I did. The stuff that I injected, that didn't come from. That came from definitely, more
Wherever.
Clandestine place. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier in the show, or before the show, excuse me, that you had also been, doing sweats and different things. I think you began that in about your second year of recovery. Would that be safe to say that it was kind of like a supplemental modality to your healing journey?
Definitely. Yeah. A really good friend in Nanaimo actually brought me to my first sweat lodge. It was in the first year of my recovery. And I started going to sweats with him. I can't remember. I think they may have been every second weekend. But that was a pathway to healing for me that also really opened things up for me and gave me something else to go to instead of like church or some other kind of religious group or community outside of the fellowships. I started getting into going to the Buddhist temples that were in my area and sweat lodge, and I wanted to just kind of explore a different approach that wasn't secular, kind of rooted in any actual religious ideology. So sweat lodge was powerful for sure. I actually really miss going to sweats. It's been a long time. but I think that it's also a really good way to go. And yeah.
And I've been saying this. I think this will be the third episode in a row that I've said it like this. But you know, like there are things called tobacco questions where you have to offer tobacco to you know, typically elders or knowledge keepers or things like that. But are you open to sharing a little bit about how sweat lodges helped? I mean, people talk, like they say, oh, sweats are great, and they say, oh, you know, pipe ceremonies and sun dances and all of these things, and I'm not shaking my hands to detract from their value by any means, but like, what was it about a sweat? Like, what did you go into that sweat and learn that has brought healing to your life?
I mean, I think the main part of it for me was to be able to kind of experience something different and be taken with a friend who goes regularly, and, you know, for it to be held by an elder from that community. I'm not sure if I'll say his name, but I found it to be a really beautiful way to kind of feel a part of something, you know, like they say, bigger or greater than myself, and to have that opportunity to connect in that way. And I remember part of it for me also, the healing in the sweat lodge for me, was that my Aunt Tina would tell me stories of my grandfather, Sam Augustine, who was a Mi'kmaq elder that my grandma had married later on. So he was like a stepfather to my aunt. And I remember when I was a kid, before my mom and I got separated, my Aunt Tina, like, you know, doing smudging, and there was sweetgrass, and there were these little things that I, you know, didn't understand at that age, but there was this moment of kind of this recall of this, you know, practice that she shared with me. And so when I went to the sweat, I was like, oh yeah, you know, that I remember this now, you know. And so there was part of that, you know, brought me back to that time in my childhood, you know, where there was some love and there was some nurturing. And so part of it was that. And then the other part of it was just being really curious, you know, learning. You mentioned tobacco, learning about tobacco, and the elder that holds that lodge, you know, would share that, you know, tobacco is a medicine, and it's used to carry our prayers to the ancestors and to the creator, and to be mindful when you're using tobacco. And that, yeah, you know, yeah. And I was a cigarette smoker, and, you know, struggled with tobacco off and on. And here in the Amazon, tobacco is used a lot for prayer and during ceremony. And yeah, it's definitely a tool, and I use it, you know, with wise intention now, whereas in the past it was definitely just something that I used as a crutch. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from all of the various indigenous traditions, whether it be, you know, sweat lodge in North America, wherever you might be on the coast or in the prairies, or down here in South America. There's, you know, a wide, vast range of traditions that work with various medicines and ayahuasca and, you know, all kinds of things. And I think, yeah, there's a lot there. The particular path that I found and fell into is the Shipibo tradition. And the Shipibo Kunibo people are an indigenous group from the Ucayali river region in the Peruvian Amazon near a city called Pucallpa. And they work with ayahuasca, which is made from two plants, a vine and leaves, and it's cooked together, and you drink it at night, and they hold ceremony, and the healing work is done through songs called Icaros. And so I've been down here immersed in that and studying in that and learning how to use it as a tool to help people address more of the underlying causes of their substance use and, you know, trauma and other things that lead to problematic behaviors. And so that's what I do now, and have been doing for 3 years here and 3 years before in Canada.
Yeah. That's incredible to me. How did they figure that out? Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we're going to take this vine and we're going to take this plant over here, and we're going to cook them together, and we're going to take them, and we're going to go to the moon, and we're going to sing songs. Like how do you have any information on that? Do you have any, like, the origins of it? Who was inclined to do that?
That's a big story, and I'm not Shipibo, and I don't feel like I should be the one to share that. But what I will say is there's a movie called The Song That Calls You Home, and it's a movie documentary about ayahuasca and the Shipibo tradition. My teacher, Maestro Ricardo Amaringo, is in it, and he shares that story in that video, and it's edited to, like, you know, an animated kind of piece. So I think if you want to know that particular part, I think that would be your best bet in hearing that piece. I could tell you it, but I would rather watch my teacher explain it.
That's fair. Can you share with us your personal experiences with ayahuasca? How did that bring you healing? Like, you know, we talk about hearing Mama Aya, you know, or seeing this being, and you mentioned talking about you felt a female presence when you were using LSD. Was that female presence somehow similar to what you experienced with ayahuasca?
Definitely
Really?
was, as you know, and even just in the moment of you asking me that, it's like, yeah, the first 2 nights that I drank ayahuasca, I was really disappointed because nothing happened. I didn't have any effect. I didn't have any psychedelic experience, and I went to ayahuasca as a last resort, actually, because I was now at the 3-year mark of not using alcohol or cocaine or opiates, and I was really struggling with depression. And I was on a 2-year wait list for colorectal surgery. I had the occipital neuralgia, the nerve problem in my back. I was extremely stressed out. And once again, I found myself in that place where I was like, I wanted to die. And I was considering it, you know, 3 years into my recovery. And here I am again. I want to take my life. I'm like serious about doing it. And so I decided as a last resort to go to these ceremonies and thought, hey, why not? I've tried everything else. What do I got to lose? And I went. Nothing happened the first 2 nights, and I was like, oh God, it's over. I was so devastated. And then I was given instructions on like how to actually work with the ayahuasca. And again, me being a skeptic and an oil rigger, and you know, I'd done my psychedelic experiences and stuff, but I'd never really had, you know, the shamanic aspect to any of it or the guided aspect to any of it. And they were like, you need to sit up straight, and you need to focus on your breath, and you need to ask the spirit to show you what you need to do. And I was like, ask it. And they're like, yeah, like ask it. Mother Ayahuasca, what do I need to do? And so I went into the ceremony on the 3rd night, and that's what I did. It's awkward sitting there, drink the ayahuasca, like Mother Ayahuasca, you know. And then something happened, you know. So there was a shift in my perception. I felt the effects. There was this definite female presence, glowing green light that came down, and I received a reply, and she said, you need to learn how to love yourself. And I was like, well, how do I do that? You know, and she just said, start by thanking your feet for walking you here to have this experience. And I reached down literally, and it's dark, right? We're in the ceremony space. It's dark. It's quiet. Nobody talks. It's just, I hold my feet, and I just was like, thank you. You know, and there was this moment that hit me of just this deep sense of gratitude and awe of just how grateful I was to have the ability to walk, to be alive, you know, to have, you know, somewhat of a healthy trajectory now with this opportunity to actually, you know, do the deeper work. And my hands carried up to my knees and every part of my body. I was just feeling myself going, wow, thank you, you know. And then I got to like my groin, and there was this huge flash of light, and I saw myself being born through my mother's eyes. I watched my whole life happen through my mother's eyes, like right up to the point where my mom and I were separated. And it was just like playing like a movie. And I saw my mom and the pain that she was in from the separation of me and my sister when I was 13 years old, and I finally, for the first time, felt like I wasn't the one who was abandoned. I had compassion and empathy for my mom and was able to actually see the pain that it caused her, which I never was able to see before. And I got reunited with my mom about a year before this experience, and my mom moved to Vancouver Island, and I couldn't be near her. It was so triggering for me. It was so uncomfortable for me. And I would be driving down the road and I would see my mom with her like walker at a bus stop with groceries, and I would just drive right past her because I didn't have the capacity emotionally to pull over and help her, because it was so hard for me. There's so much pain. And the irony of it all was like, I went my whole life struggling the way that I did, just wishing so bad that I had my mom. And then here's my mom. I'm in my first couple of years of recovery, and like, I don't even have the ability to like help her, because it just brought up so much hurt for me. And after that experience, I reached out to my mom and I was like, Mom, like, would you be open to going to counseling and therapy together with me? And my mom and I started going to therapy and counseling together. And we have a good relationship now. And that experience created that opportunity to take place. And then I thought, wow, I better keep going to these ceremonies. That was incredible. So I went every single month, 2 nights or 3 nights. It was guided by a therapist at the time. And, who had a lot of experience, who had traditional training in the Amazon. And I thought, okay, I found some community. It's acceptable what I'm doing. It's helping me. And, I think it was 7 or 8 ceremonies later, I went to see the specialist that I was supposed to have surgery with. And she asked, what have you been doing? Like, what's changed in your life? And reluctantly told her I started drinking ayahuasca. And she just said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You don't need surgery anymore, And I had already been to like the emergency room multiple times, doctors, my family doctor, and everybody told me the only thing that I was going to be able to do to correct that was to have surgery. And so I was like, okay, so this work somehow also healed my physical body, which I was pretty baffled by. And yeah, long story short, after all that, I decided that I wanted to go deeper into the learning and apprentice and learn more about it and heal more of myself. And I'd been doing a lot of intervention work and helping people get to treatment. And I would watch people go away and have this opportunity to get help. And, I was doing a lot of different things at the time, running a business and, working with a couple of other peer-led organizations, trying to kind of make a difference in the community and not really getting anywhere. And so I just wanted to come here and get a chance to help myself. And I came here and met my teacher and just was like, wanted to stay. And started a little farm project. And then the farm project turned into having a residential treatment program for 1 to 4 guests as an accessory to the existing center that's already here. And so that's what I've been doing now for the last 2 years of the time that I've been in Peru, is bringing people down for an intensive rehabilitation program that's, empowerment focused, holistic health, nutrition focused, fitness. All of those different aspects come into it. If they want to explore 12-step work, I've got all the literature and books here. If they want to do recovery dharma, they do recovery dharma. Whatever pathway they want to choose, I'm just like, here are all of the options. What feels best for you? And let's do that. I host 2 online meetings a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays, 7 o'clock Vancouver time, for people who use substances, who are in recovery, who are curious about working with psychedelics. So I've kind of built what I needed actually for myself originally, and then to connect with other people that I've met along the way who also come from 12-step fellowships, or maybe went to a non-12-step fellowship that work with psychedelics now. And we have a really big community of peers and people with lived experience who have found, some form of refuge in working with this tradition or in other traditions. And we have community. And that's, I think, what I realized I was longing for my whole life. I found it working with traditional Amazonian plant medicine and the people who share and do this work, and my teachers in recovery. He's been drinking ayahuasca for 43 years, and he used to be homeless, orphan, smoking cocaine paste here in Peru, and ayahuasca and that path gave him an opportunity to leave that life behind. And he teaches and shares his knowledge in the same way. And it's all about empowerment and helping people learn how to heal themselves.
Got a comment, Lish 5043.
Mm-hmm. She says, "Dang, I'm so jealous we don't have this in the States, at least not in mine."
So, I would love to have the opportunity to bring your teacher on sometime. Do you think that might be a thing?
We would need a translator. He speaks
really?
Spanish and he speaks Shipibo. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you speak as well, or like?
I speak Spanish, a little bit of Spanish. It's not as good as it could be. And I study Shipibo, yeah. But the Shipibo that I study is more for medicine songs, because the songs are all improvised. And it's a really complicated language. Lots of prefixes and suffixes, and grammatically it's quite challenging. And yeah, it's very different than Spanish.
So you've never performed the Icaros then?
Yeah, I do. I sing medicine songs.
I'm interested because I've heard I've had a little while ago I had a friend on named Roman Corkery, and he was like, he went down to Amazon and he practiced, well, he experienced all the medicine and things like that, and he was saying that like you just mentioned, the Icaros, they're all improvised, and it's interesting that like you can be overseeing or I don't know what the language is around that, but you have several people around you in medicine and you're performing these Icaros, and he's saying like the healer would know like when you're in trouble, and then the Icaros would be directed towards you, and oh, this guy's having trouble right now and it's okay and it's gonna be and all this, and then the Icaros would go to another person. And like, what is that like for you? Like, are you in medicine as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Part of it is
do you see like
like
their energetic field? Like, how do you read who's maybe needing that focus?
Well, generally the way that the work is constructed and the way that it's facilitated and organized, it's very well organized here. And so there's a translator who has a sheet of every name of person who's in the ceremony space with their intentions. And each night, a person has their experience and they go, oh, I saw this, or I felt this emotion, or there was this pain in my body, or this memory of my abuse, or this memory of my, addiction or whatever. And so they take the person up to the shaman or the curandero, and they bring them and they read the intention to them with a red flashlight. So it doesn't, it's not bright. It's in a dark room, dark ceremony space. And then once the intention's been read, then the shaman sings to the individual specific to their intentions to help them with whatever might be happening. And part of that work is like, there's kind of two parts to it. There's like the energetic piece to it where, they're singing to these difficult things or these blockages or these pains. And then the other part to it is like what's happening for the individual who's receiving the song. And so that's the focus of my work for substance use disorders. Like when I come to sing to a person, I'm not this powerful shaman who's like singing this song and the song that I'm singing is healing you. It's not about that. It's about what's coming up for you in that process. What are you feeling? What are you seeing? What memories, what thoughts are coming to you? And then that's the basis of the work for the next day in the day program, and possibly for the next ceremony, and you can use an example. I was singing to a guest that I have here the other night, and after ceremony during the debrief, he was like, yeah, it was weird. I had this memory of, this girlfriend that I really treated poorly, and I owe her a bunch of money, and I feel like I ripped her off, and I've been dishonest, and I kind of just ghosted from her. And it reminded me of, I need to reach out to her and I need to reconcile with her, as I get into my, step work. That's something that I want to do and put as an intention. So that's an example of what that process can be and do. And the people who are much more skilled, of course, like I said, I'm an apprentice, and I'll never be at my teacher's level. And I'm not quite sure that I would want to be either. It's a lot. They have, deeper capabilities, and, there's more complex aspects to the work that they do that I'll never be able to really fully understand. But in terms of practicality, having the relationship with a therapeutic client that I have, for example, and getting to know them and getting to understand them and getting to know the process that they're in, and to be able to use the ayahuasca experience as a tool to go deeper into the daytime work, it's amazingly effective, tremendously effective. And I don't know of any other peer-led organizations that are working with ayahuasca that do residential inpatient programs. To my knowledge, I would love to know if there's more, because I would love to connect with them and have more friends. But right now, I'm the only person in this area that's doing what I'm doing. And I would one day like to bring it to North America for sure, because it works. And, it's definitely a different way to do recovery. I don't talk about sobriety so much. I sometimes use words like addiction. I'm really trying to be more mindful of my language and the way that I talk about substance related, mental health related type of things, because, it is changing. I think there's a problem with the idea of addiction being a disease. I think there's some things in there that need to be addressed and shifted and looked at from a different lens, for sure. And like I said, like my whole approach is about empowerment. It's not about, making you feel powerless. It's the opposite of what we do here. We want people to understand their own ability to overcome their difficulty and have access to community and have access to safe, regulated supply of whatever their medicine might be, whatever the substance might be. I'm a harm reductionist first and foremost. I'm a huge advocate for the safe and regulated supply of all substances and access to overdose prevention sites and whatever people might need. I think it's imperative, and it's tragic to be here watching so many changes happen in Canada, where access is being limited and restricted again. And the way that people who use substances are being criminalized. And I did a lot of advocacy work and still do. And it's hard to watch from here, honestly.
You said something a few minutes ago, and it was what was... I was going to bring it up and now I'm sort of forgetting the context. You were working with someone, you were working with Icaros, and he was doing step work during the day. So, and I know you did kind of mention it, but is that something that's common? Like, you have people come down and they want to do 12 steps, but they also want to practice in medicine as well?
Yeah, it's very common. It's very common. And the reason why I think it's good is actually because, the book is a guide. The book is a workbook. There's questions. It's very comprehensive. Some of the language is, I think, a little bit out of date, but it's all there.
Yeah.
And I think having the opportunity to, the book was written by people just like us, and I think that there's a lot of value in having a guide to work through during the day. And like I said, the psychedelic experience, it brings up these repressed emotions, these repressed feelings, these different traumas, and it allows you to confront them and approach them from a place of, deep compassion and understanding, and a willingness to let go of, these pains and these things that hold us back. And it's not for everybody. I turn a lot of people away. I direct and guide people to go to other approaches of recovery. A big thing for me here is I can't offer medical detox. I'm an hour away from the nearest hospital in the middle of nowhere. So for somebody who is struggling with an opioid use disorder and they're buying their dope on the street, they need to go to medical detox before they come down here, because one, they could potentially die with all the benzos and different things that are in there. And, two, being in 35 degrees Celsius, which is like 101 Fahrenheit, in 85 to 90% humidity, and you're coming off dope, there's no air conditioning or swimming pool or chocolate ice cream here. It's like,
wow.
Yeah,
that's uncomfortable on a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just it. So it's like, it's a big responsibility for me, and I take it really seriously, and I want people to come here and do really well, and so some people I'm like, I'll refer them to a detox center. I'll refer them to an inpatient program somewhere else, wherever they are in their community for, maybe 30 days or 14 days. And then once they've got a little bit of stability, come on down, and the majority of people who come here to work with me are people who've gone through all of the conventional treatment centers. They've tried all of the other ways and been through in and out of rehabs and detoxes, and it never worked, and then they come down here and they're like open to trying this, and they do it and they do well. That's been my experience. I'm on the 14th person that I've had down here with me for anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months. And so far, everybody's doing and done very well and continue to do very well for themselves. And it's not all about just drinking ayahuasca. We do ceremony 2 days a week. We drink the ayahuasca 2 nights a week. And 2 nights of the week, they go to ceremony and they don't drink ayahuasca. They go and they receive a song, and it's about receiving the song. It's not about drinking the ayahuasca. And then the rest of the week is just day program. We go to the gym, we box, we go canoeing, we plant trees, we grow food, we do the online meetings, we do other things with friends and people, go to the river to go swimming, all kinds of stuff. So it's like getting to really live life, learning what that means and what that is, and then having the experience that we have with the ceremony to kind of help us go a little bit deeper in it all. And it's effective.
Let's go.
I've got 2 questions, but just walking back for a second there. Did you say anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
That's correct. Yeah.
And is that like quite normal? Like how long generally is the program, or is it very open-ended?
I generally like to recommend that people come for 3 months. Like if people are really struggling, and it's like they're struggling with, chronic relapse. I hate that word relapse, but I'm just, I think it's the more time, the better. There's a lot of science and research around neuroplasticity, and it taking 90 days to kind of like create new neural pathways and change behaviors and habits. I think that's part of it. And then also too, it's like, you really want to take your time, like one of the hardest things that I see, cause I don't pay for advertising, podcasts. Thank you so much for having me on. This is one of the ways that I reach people and people hear about me. Thank you. And, I see these advertisements, 4-day addiction retreat, 7-day addiction retreat, with ayahuasca or with psilocybin or with whatever. And I'm like, it just doesn't work like that. When somebody tells me, oh, I've been struggling with, crystal meth and heroin, and I want to come down for 2 weeks, I'm like, I want to be able to say, yeah, but it's like, it's not a cure. It doesn't work like that. It takes time. It's a tool that allows you to go into yourself more, but it's not enough to just make you stop using. And I'll use the example of, the intravenous shot of LSD. I was, back doing what I was doing not long after that, because it wasn't enough to make the change. It was enough to inspire me. And that happens down here for sure. People have a few profound experiences like the one that I had, that brought me to want to work with my mom therapeutically. And, I think having program is important. Having community is important. Having the time away from the environment that may still be triggering or that may be enabling to really build a strong and solid foundation for an individual so that when they leave here, they're like, yeah, like, I'm not going to go back to doing that, and the healing work's been done. And I think time is part of that medicine working.
Mm-hmm.
So the other question I had, and Dan kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but I'm curious, like, how often do people come who have like maybe multiple years of recovery under their belt? Do you see that frequently as well? Or is this people more fresh or having, like you say, these chronic relapses?
Very, very frequently. Like I was saying, the center that I'm a part of is called Niue Rao. And it was founded in 2011, and it's got a pretty healthy, long history. A lot of medical professionals, therapists, psychotherapists, people in that realm and community have been coming here for years for themselves and referring clients here. So it's really well established and respected and, revered for being a place of integrity and respect. And a lot of people with a lot of time in recovery come through. Yeah. I've met people here, who are like, oh, I remember I came here when this place opened. They've got 25 years in AA or 30 years in AA or, most of the people that I know who are in recovery, I met down here, or I met in NA and, because I'm here, they wanted to come down. I took my sponsor to his first ayahuasca ceremony a week after he took an 11-year cake in NA. He was like, I see what you're doing with your life and you're doing so great. And I want to experience this. I think it's going to help me. You're not going to go and NA talk about it. I learned that the hard way. But, I think it just goes to show that, yeah, things are changing, times are changing, and it's good to go where that there's recovery community. I would be weary for anybody who is like, I'm going to go drink ayahuasca. I'm going to just, pick a name off of Google and go, don't do that. Do your research.
Mm-hmm.
I had a guy reach out to me, and I forget who was on, but they were talking about ayahuasca, and I had someone reach out to me that I know here in Saskatoon. He's like, "We're gonna get some. I want to do it." Like he was gonna go and do it by himself on his couch in his basement. I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. One, I can't be supplying my following with, I can't be connecting them with things that are currently illegal. I can't do that.
No.
Second of all, I just think that's a horrible idea, and I'm not having any part of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of medications that are contraindicative and can be potentially fatal or dangerous with ayahuasca because of one of the compounds in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, SSRIs, sleep medications, blood pressure medications, there's a lot of things that people can't be taking and need to come off of. It's not just illicit substances. So it's a big responsibility and a commitment for anybody considering it for sure. And so everybody should be well informed.
Mm-hmm. And is there a dieta involved? I imagine there is.
There can be. I don't recommend dietas for people in really early recovery at all, actually, because the diet itself, the nutritional aspect of it is very restrictive. I've done 2 years of dietas here, strict dietas. One of them was 1 year long, where I basically just ate fish and plantains and rice for a year, no salt, no fruit, no vegetables.
Holy man.
It was part of my experience of like getting into learning in this tradition. And so, I think that for people in early recovery, I've got a beautiful kitchen that we built. We make smoothies and we eat regular food and fruit and have all the goods. But for people who are doing a dietas are a really powerful experience and very different. In the Shipibo tradition, there's a wide range of plants that are used as well. So somebody would be prescribed a plant specifically for maybe you have arthritis, or maybe you have some other health problem, or Crohn's disease or diabetes. And so there's these different traditional Amazonian plants that are used to treat those illnesses. And interestingly enough, if you look at modern medication to treat those same illnesses, a lot of them come from these plants that, ethnobotanists were here in the Amazon studying, in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And a lot of modern medicine and a lot of modern cures come from these same plants in the Amazon that the Shipibo people and other indigenous groups have been using for millennia. So
where can people find you, man?
sacredrebelsrecovery.com. And then on Instagram at Sacred Rebels Recovery. And my phone number's on there, my email's on there, and I'm always happy to talk and answer people's questions. The work that I offer is, often on a sliding scale, and I always like to accommodate people that I can say yes to. So I do my best to make it work. And, the center's owned by my teacher, and I'm here as a person with lived experience that, really wants to help people. And I love people who use drugs, and no judgment, super open. It's all about just supporting each other and empowering people to make healthier choices and live well.
Of course. And thank you for joining us this evening. Your words are very impactful. Thank you very much. And take care, my friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, if you got anything out of that, please hit that like button at the bottom of the screen. If you're not yet subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. We try to go live twice a week. We got like 300 episodes at this time. If you're 5 years from now, we probably have way more than that. But leave us a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what you learned today. We want to hear what you didn't learn today. We want to hear what you want to learn. If you want to share your experiences, leave it in the comment section. We read every single comment. Conversations matter. Every voice matters. So keep them coming and keep tuning in. This is only the beginning. Thanks very much. Take care.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.